This is Truthful Manipulation, where truth is the truth and reality is made real and clear to understand. I'm Dave Kelsey, and I'm here today with my co-host, H. Daniel Mujahid. This week on Truthful Manipulation, we thought we would take you back to really the beginning and what we started the podcast out for. So today we're going to talk to you about what truthful manipulation stands for. And we know that phrase sounds like a contradiction. And we're aware that we need you to be aware that we chose that name purposely because of that contradiction. Because when I first met with Daniel and we were sitting at a Starbucks coffee shop talking about what we should name this podcast, all of a sudden out of my mouth came Truthful Manipulation. And Daniel, what was your reaction?
When you said that, I said, what? I said, truthful manipulation, what? I said, it doesn't have a clear meaning. It means more than one thing. It's an oddity. What do you mean? I said, is it an oxymoron? What? Truthful and then manipulation, how do they go together?
And I looked at Daniel and said to him, that reaction that you just had is the reaction that I was looking for, because truthful manipulation is meant to stop you in your tracks, and it's meant to force you to make a decision. Most manipulations today are powered by half-truths, hidden motives, pressure and fear, emotional hooks, moving goalposts, and control disguised as care. Truthful manipulation flips that script. We strive to use disciplined influence anchored in truth, guided by integrity, and accountable to ethics. But that one thing that I told you that manipulators use and what we're seeing today used over and over is they control disguised as care. We've heard it out of our government today. I'm doing this for your best benefit. This is be in your best benefit, when we all know from what we're seeing, things are definitely not in our best benefit. But I can tell you this. I can tell you what truthful manipulation is not. You want to give this a shot, Daniel? You want to tell them what truthful manipulation is?
I think that here, right in this discussion point, it's important for us to level with each other that a lot of the things that are going on in the media, in our communities, in the marketplace, in our churches, in our schools now is really just disguised sales tricks just to get certain kinds of purchases completed, or it's the whole idea of taking some kind of a dark scheme, if you will, and trying to use it to win an argument. It's how we get people to do what we want, and it seems as though it's okay that we're getting them to do it, but really the means by which we're getting them to go along is manipulative. It's taking away their options. It's taking away their freedom to really express what they think. And it's giving them this sense of, if you go along with this, you'll get the benefit of some kind of a royalty or a pay point. And so we end up getting people to be very closed and very, let's say,
tribal.
Complicit.
Tribal.
Yeah, complicit. Okay.
Tribal, complicit. They stand for things that humanity doesn't stand for. They
Yes.
stand for all of the wrongs that are being done against other human beings. Immigrants
Yes.
are human beings.
Yes.
I question some of the humanity of those in charge because they tend to use these things, don't they? They tend to use
Yes.
sales tricks or persuasive hacks, dark philosophy. They try to win every argument and they attempt to get people to do their bidding for them. It's charisma without character, and it's manipulation dressed up in motivational quotes. This isn't influence, and this isn't truthful. What truthful manipulation does stand for, though, or truth holds up under pressure. When the emotion calms down and the facts come out and the consequences show up and time exposes the story, truthful influence doesn't need deception to be persuasive. And isn't that how you feel today, Daniel? Don't you feel as if we're constantly being manipulated in a deceptive way to try to get people to believe things that they've seen with their own eyes aren't true? And then it gets even better than that. This is even worse, Daniel. I read an article because all this Truth Social nonsense out there today. He came out and put something on Truth Social and said something about keeping or having the federal government was that the buildings, the cars would be protected at all expenses, and he was protecting us. But he wasn't talking about everyday citizens. He was talking about the advances of a state-run police force right now that's out of control, and it's out of control towards American citizens. But the reason that it's done or it's able to have happened is we have no integrity in any of these individuals. You know they lie. You know they steal. You know they attempt to use the legal system against people that aren't guilty, and those that are guilty seem to walk. Now you've got the American people deciding or trying to decide, is the judicial system working for us, or is it now stacked totally against us? Daniel, you'll probably have a little different viewpoint on this because you and I both know that the judicial system has always been stacked disproportionately against the races. Am I wrong, Daniel, or am I not?
Well, I wouldn't say that the legal system has been stacked against the racists. I would say that it has been stacked in favor of the racists, which is why we have the problem now, because we fail to realize the value in each ethnic group that is American.
Well, what my point with that is, and I just saw this thing over the weekend that I found extraordinarily interesting. You had a couple of guys over here in Detroit that used to run something called BMF. They call it Black Mafia Family. They ended up being a couple of the largest cocaine dealers in all of the U.S. But the point is when those guys went to court and when they were sentenced, they were not violent criminals. They had never done a violent act against anybody, but they were given 30 years in jail because they were black. Now let's turn the tides. If you're a mafia don and you're charged and go to court, guess what the maximum sentence for that is, Daniel? Guess what the maximum sentence is?
2 months?
20 years. 20 years. So these guys who were not violent criminals went to prison for 30 years in comparison to a mafia don who definitely was responsible for murdering people. He only went to jail for 20 years. But the point is, our federal government's now run like a mafia organization, except we gave the Don the purse strings to the federal government. We gave the Don apparent immunity, which at some point, these guys that are in the Supreme Court are going to figure out that no man is above the law, including the President of the United States, especially one that's they knew was a felon before he ever got there. And the things that are going on right now are not only against the Constitution, they are against the vast majority of the American people. Daniel said this a couple of weeks ago. It's proving more and more on a daily basis. We've got a federal government that has declared war on U.S. citizens.
Mm-hmm.
They're talking about us and them. When they start talking about us and them, instead of all of us being American, we got a problem. But we've got a commander-in-chief that are telling this thug group that they can go out and do whatever they want, and we, as U.S. citizens, don't have any rights. Well, I got news for him. We do have rights. Article 2 of the Constitution was put there so we have the right to bear arms. The reason we have the right to bear arms is to fight against enemies, foreign and domestic. When your government is turning out to be a domestic terrorist against the American people, when are the people in power going to, number one, cut off the money to this criminal enterprise, number two, take this person out of power, and number three, he's already been prosecuted. It's time to take him out of power and imprison him where he belongs, along with all of those that went along with what's going on. That is not the America that we all signed up to live in. What do you think, Daniel?
I think it's interesting that you chose that series. As it turns out, one of the experts that is using that series early to explain the dynamics of what has been created by America's dual justice system. That gentleman there happens to be a personal mentor, one of my early mentors in my development as a person, human, college scholar, whatever. And he, hopefully, we may be able to get him at some point in time to join us and discuss this further on our show. That's the great Dr. Carl S. Taylor. And yeah, he's a personal mentor, and many that know him, and he's renowned for his views in terms of his ability to show the reality of why gangs do what they do, why gang leaders become the way they become. And I think it's important when we talk about dissecting America's problem that we understand how complicity has led to the nightmare that we're living on a daily basis now with the current federal administration. So hopefully we'll get a chance. I'll try to see if we can do that.
Daniel, when I look at that show, I saw poverty and I saw kids that really didn't have a whole lot of choice but to do what they did if they wanted to survive at the time. But yet, these guys were smarter than a lot of CEOs that I've worked with. They were way smarter than a lot of CEOs I've worked with. Because let me tell you what, I've worked with some that I really question their manipulative tactics that they use. They were always trying to lead by getting people to do what they wanted, not getting them to understand what the vision was. And that's why we've lost our own self-awareness in the US, because we're not able to look at things clearly today. The federal government is trying to confuse everybody on a daily basis and keep us confused to the point where we won't look over here. We won't look at the fact that our government is covering up a bunch of pedophiles. The guy that signed the law that said that all of the files have to be released was running with this dude in the 90s. We all know what his track record was over the years. What do you think he was doing with a guy that was with a pedophile that was running underage girls at the time? Let's have a little bit of common sense here, folks. We all know what was going on. Might not be able to prove it, but I'll guarantee you that there are boatloads of big-time political figures that will be in those files that I think it's funny the girls' names keep coming out, but I don't see any men's names, and there were men involved because the women didn't do it to themselves. Wake up, people.
In the article you wrote about this, Dave, you had an interesting point about how coercion really displaces consent. You get to the point where the power is being forced on the general person, forcing the sense of urgency, causing them to have a sense of guilt, and then weaponizing the term you use, weaponizing loyalty. In other words, you end up being an agent against yourself, your own goodness in yourself, just to try to get along and figure out a way to survive the madness of the rule of law that's being ignored.
Well, Daniel, wasn't the rule put, or the rule of law put in place to put some boundaries in place?
Yeah.
And what do these guys do with boundaries today? You tell me.
They make sure that they get withdrawn, and they get marginalized, and they make sure that they become things that people are felt they must ignore.
But the main thing they do is they punish the boundaries that were set up. They set up boundaries, and then they punish those that are put in place to enforce those boundaries because they didn't go along with their deviant schemes.
Right.
They only use integrity when somebody's watching. Or in the case of the guys today, they don't use integrity at all anymore. It used to be they'd use integrity when somebody was watching, but they wouldn't use it at any other time. Today, they just plain don't give a shit. They don't care about values. They don't care about the truth. They don't care about the law. And as soon as you figure out they don't care about you, is when we can start changing things. On March 28th, I think it is, they're going to have another No Kings protest. They're hoping for 11 million people to show up at this. If we've got people listening to this show, listen, folks, we need a whole lot more than 11 million people to get this administration's attention. They say that it has to be over 3% of the population before they'll start listening. Well, they haven't listened to us so far, and they keep pushing boundaries. Let's not shoot for 14 million people. Let's shoot for 25 million people. Let's put so many people on the street that they can't figure out what's going on. And then let's get somebody to put a plan together, because ICE have to stay in hotels somewhere. We need to find out what the brand name of those hotels are, so that as Americans, We can start boycotting. We can stop giving our money to those that are doing things against us, because it takes more than just the federal government for these people to be all over the country doing this stuff. There are local businesses that are perpetrators, and we need to hurt them financially. And once we figure out how to hurt them financially, we'll put an end to the nonsense.
I was going to say, David, I thought it was a nice point you made in your article, your recent article, because you spoke about the need for Americans to protect those of us who don't see what's coming. See, not everybody realizes what this is. And out of fairness, instead of spending time trying to convince Americans that this is a dangerous administration that is hell-bent on destroying the Constitution and hell-bent on destroying American life, it's important for us to plan to protect those who don't see it coming. I like that point that you made, and I think that's why you say the number, we need more than we think we need.
We need more than we think we need, and this is why it matters right now. We're living in a time where confidence is often rewarded more than competence. Well, we've got people in charge that are very confident and very incompetent. We can see that from the court rulings, from all of the lawsuits that have been filed. All you got to do is look at the dude's history. His whole life is, if he couldn't win something one way, he would sue people because they would run out of money before he would. Is that really what you look at as an ethical leader? And today, outrage spreads faster than truth. When you jump on the internet, does it take you down a truth line, or does it take you down an outrage line, one way or another? I'm a mega whatever, I'm against mega all the way. But it's outrage spreads faster than truth spreads. And
I think that
but
that
listen
allows
to this
us,
one, Daniel. Listen to this one. People confuse influence with leadership. We've got people that are very influential at the top, but lack leadership skills.
Yes. It boils down to, Dave, again, I think you were hitting it on the head when you talked about the need for each of us to have standards and to live those standards and be true to those standards. You know, a lot of us now, we don't give a resolve in terms of looking at our actions in the mirror. Is our intention truthful? Or is it just something that's useful that we're trying to use it to do?
Daniel, this is what we have right now. We have narratives are treated like facts. Somebody says something like it's a fact, and it's treated that way even when it's not. And integrity is marketed more than practiced. Integrity is marketed more than practiced. They tell you that they're doing it with integrity as they're stabbing you in the back with the other hand.
Mm-hmm.
Here's a simple personal standard test to ask yourself. Before you judge someone else's behavior, run this on your own. Am I telling the full truth or just the useful truth? Is my motive clean, or is it controlled, dressed up as concerned? Am I offering a real choice or manufacturing pressure? Would I be proud if this conversation was recorded and played publicly? If the roles were reversed, would I feel respected or handled? The bottom line is, truthful manipulation stands for ethical influence, leadership without deception, persuasion without coercion, truth without theatrics, and integrity when it's inconvenient. My challenge to you is, this week, choose one conversation where you'll influence with truth, not pressure, no hooks, no guilt, no games, just clarity, respect, and accountability. That's how we'll change culture, one honest decision at a time. And that's this week's episode of Truthful Manipulation. Please get a hold of us at truthfulmanipulation@gmail.com so we can discuss what was talked about on today's show. Get a copy of our book, Truthful Manipulation, A Roadmap to Live By, available on Amazon worldwide. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe at truthfulmanipulation.com. We look forward to the No Kings protest the end of March. Let's get out, America, and stand for right. Thank you very much for listening this week.
Mm-hmm.